Let's do it.
I'm Joe.
I'm Lisa.
And we're here to talk about the flipped classroom model and blended learning. And I think we're going to start with, Lisa, tell us a story about how you've used the flipped classroom model in your classroom with your students.
So I work with a group of students with really significant special needs. These are kids who struggle across the board at school, socially, academically. They get a lot of support. And I was realizing that the time that I was spending with them in class, it was so much of just me giving them content. And so these are kids who are not really big independent readers. I was reading a lot out loud in class. And like a lot of teachers, one of our biggest complaints is time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough time.
So tell me, with those kids, tell me about their attention level when they're in class listening to you read to them.
So I think I'm pretty interesting.
It's true. I've met her. She is.
I don't really, they're having a hard time. They don't want to sit and just listen to the sound of my voice for the whole class period. And so I realized I needed to do something different. I needed to do something to maximize the time that I was using in class, because I knew that they were capable of doing more. I knew that they could do more with application. I knew that they could get to a higher level of thinking. We just could never get there.
And so you would send home homework for them to work on and get to mastery. With that group of kids, what was your level of success with that, with kids bringing back the homework and having it done to mastery and having the concepts learned? And tell me about just the level of success of having kids bringing back the homework and having it be done.
So imagine this. The kids who were in class who, while I was giving them content, during class, the kids who got it, right, clearly got it, showed up with their homework done. I did the homework. I did it so well. The kids who were struggling to pay attention or who needed more and more repetition, either they tried and gave up, or they came in with a lot of excuses, which I knew really which came down to they weren't really learning. They weren't really able to get that information and do something with it. So I tried with one lesson. I had heard about this flipped model. I wasn't ready to drastically change every single thing that I did, but I started with one lesson. And when I told my students that their homework was to watch a video, they could not believe their good fortune. Pretty short video. It was definitely less than 5 minutes. And the kids came in the next day and they had all watched the video and were able to talk about it. And then during class, we could do an activity with the information that they had learned from watching the video. It was pretty life-changing. And I really felt like that class time was just really well spent, and the kids felt good about it too.
Well, that's good. Let me tell you something else that's life-changing. I have a 13-year-old daughter. She's used to me talking about her like this, so don't anybody feel sorry for her. She's given me permission to do this. And she is learning Common Core math in her middle school right now. She's in 7th grade, which means that I was no longer able to help her with her homework by the time that she got to like 4th grade doing Common Core math.
And you're a teacher.
But I am not a math teacher.
All right, all right.
Okay, but the story that she tells me is that she'll sit in the classroom, and when the teacher is talking to her, explaining how to do the math and going through the process, she gets it, she understands it, she writes down notes. And then the teacher says, okay, now you're going to go home and do the homework. You're going to work on 15 problems, and then you're going to bring in the 15 problems tomorrow. We're going to go over the answers.
I think that's a pretty standard math class practice.
It's pretty much the way that I did math when I was in school, right? So she brings home the math problems, by that time has completely forgotten the lesson that the teacher taught in class, and then sits down with me and says, can you reteach me the lesson? And the answer is no, I cannot. But one of the things that would be cool is if the teacher posted some sort of information, a snippet of her lecture in class a short demonstration of how to work the problems, the skill that they learned in class, then actually not only could Catherine watch it at home, but I could watch it at home too. We could go through that, and then she could start working through the problems.
So is that something that the two of you could actually do together, and then you would maybe feel like you could help her a little bit with her homework?
Well, at least she would feel like she
Maybe.
knows what the teacher is talking about. I would be present for all of that. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves and talk about why we're talking about this subject.
All right, sounds good. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Berghoff, and I am a special education teacher here at Deerfield High School.
I'm Joe Taylor. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology at Deerfield High School. I've been in some capacity a technology coordinator or a director of instructional technology for the last 10 years. And I've got some experience in Deerfield High School is sort of it's a very high achieving school district in a fairly wealthy area. But I have some experience in some high schools that are in more economically challenged areas where kids have some different challenges. And we have I've seen experienced the flipped classroom model with teachers in every curricular area at both kinds of schools, and I've seen a lot of success. So we wanted to talk today a little bit about how to get there, what the flipped classroom is, and give you some tools that you can use with your classes.
And we already have a question here from Canada about students who don't have web access at home and how to not isolate them. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
I do. I actually was at a mini conference yesterday for Tech and Learning Live. And I was on a panel with John Bergman, who is the father of the flipped classroom model. Yes, by the way, I've already updated my resume to say frequent co-presenter with John Bergman, but I told him that too, and I think he called me Dale at the end of the conversation.
Oh.
But with the group, we had a long conversation about that, and I can't really speak to where you are in California, but I want to talk, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else is from California. I can't really speak to where you are in Canada, but I can talk about the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And I'm going to talk about it again from the standpoint of being at Deerfield, where it's a fairly affluent area. We do not have that problem. And if we do have students who don't have access to the internet here, then there are establishments, public libraries that have not only Wi-Fi, but WiMAX, which means that even if they're in the parking lot, they can get access to the internet.
We should also point out that we are a one-to-one Chromebook district.
Right.
So our students do have devices.
Right, which means that whether you have a Chromebook or an iPad, if you create a video for students and you want them to watch it at home, you can put it on Google Drive and they can have access to it whether they have the internet or not. But before we go on, I want to address the digital divide, because I think that the digital divide has become something different than it once was. When I first started in this profession, it really was about the kids who had access at home and the kids who don't. But as recently as last year, I was at the school in the northwest suburbs that I think is probably the most economically challenged. And we did several surveys with the families in that area, and we found that 96% of the kids had access to the internet at home. What was different is that some of them did not have access to a full computing device, like the laptop computer that we're using. Many of them were accessing the internet from a phone or something smaller. So if you have a one-to-one program, then you've eliminated that problem for most of your kids. And if you're talking about 4%, 5% of the kids, that is a problem that's fairly easily solved by working with the internet providers in your area.
And if you do have one-to-one devices and are using Google Apps, you can also cache pages.
Sure.
I know you had mentioned putting the videos on
Yeah,
Google
if you
Drive.
share every tool that we're going to show you today, you can share with kids through Google Drive. And if they have access to Google Drive and your school district allows this, which they should, they have offline support and access to anything in Google Drive, and they can watch any of your videos at home, whether they have internet access or not.
Right. Okay.
All right. So we were going to talk about your class a little bit more. We were going to talking about the audience and knowing the kids in your class and starting to flip there.
Well, so what we're going to cover this morning is a couple of things, right? So we're going to talk about what the flipped classroom is, why you would want to flip, and then how to actually do it. And we have three really easy steps to go over that. So again, I'm a special education teacher, and I have been teaching here for 19 years. I've worked with lots of different kinds of kids. I've worked with lots of different teachers who really want to make sure that they are reaching all of the kids in their classes. And when we do these kinds of lessons, flipped lessons, it not only makes it easier to differentiate, but it helps put the student in control a little bit. So for example, I have a student who will watch the videos that I post multiple times. And being able to do that, just giving him that control has been huge in his comprehension and in his ability to understand and learn.
Lisa, I think that's a really important thing to talk about. First of all, student control, but there's another, I think there's a barrier to people starting to flip their class, is that they think that they have to go all in with both feet and flip everything, flip their entire classroom. And what you were just talking about is not necessarily flipping the class, but just making your class blended, giving kids access to the resources at home. So let's talk about what the flipped classroom is. And it may take me a second to get there.
So we have created a website, and you can access the website yourself on our resources page. We have the link to the website, and it is there for you to,
We're sharing the screen.
It's there for you to look at and use, and we're hoping that this will be a great set of resources for you.
Well, I would love to tell you that we created this infographic ourselves. We did not. This is curated, and we gave credit at the bottom, but this actually comes from, this was posted on the Edudemic website, which, by the way, if you have not gone to edudemic.com and taken a look at their resources, please do so. But the flipped classroom actually started in math and science, and it was started by a man by the name of John Bergman in Colorado, who was teaching AP science to his kids, and he said, there has to be a better way. There has to be a way where I have more one-on-one time with my kids, where they're not simply sitting and getting all the information from me in class, going home and working in isolation, and then coming back in class and starting a new topic. So what he did was, he decided that he was going to start recording his lectures. And he recorded them himself. He put them online. And this, by the way, was 5 years ago in Colorado. So even if there were kids who did not have access to the internet, at that point, he was finding ways for individual students to access his lessons. So he would broadcast the lesson at home. The kids would come in the next day, and he would spend the entire class time working towards mastery in small groups or one-on-one with the kids. There's a little bit of evidence that's come in. It's such a new classroom model or new pedagogy that there's not much published empirical evidence, but we've got some evidence from ASCD and some evidence from the AECT. So I'm going to take you to our articles page, and I'm going to show you what's here. We've got from the journal, Is It Really Hip to Flip? And from ASCD, research says evidence in the flipped classroom is still coming in. But I want to talk about this article from Educational Technology Research and Development. They did a research study on one freshman level college course. And what they discovered in that course, after comparing it with several other courses that did not flip, is that the kids who were the outliers in the course, that means the kids who were already getting straight A's, their grades didn't change when they flipped the class. And the kids who were on the other end of the spectrum, who simply had not gotten any of it, who weren't doing well in class, who had the lowest possible grade, their grades didn't change either. But for the vast group of kids in the middle, they seemed to get much more mastery, and their levels of achievement went up. So we're talking about anybody from the B range all the way down to the D range. They saw success.
And actually, we have a question from Emily who says, do you feel that a video for homework or for the getting ready portion of the next day's lesson motivates students who may not possess intrinsic desire to study or do homework? And my answer to that, Emily, would be yes. I think, when Joe talks about the beginnings of flipped classes, and that was AP students who I think we think of as students who are intrinsically motivated. The students who I work with, and I think there's a large number of kids in schools that are not intrinsically motivated to study, especially on their own, or to do homework. And we were talking about this the other day. There's something about video. And so when the students know that their assignment is to watch a video, I do see a huge increase in my students who actually do it.
So I think that this is the case. I think that last year I went to my daughter's school and I did a presentation on digital citizenship. And I was showing my presentation to the principal. And she said, "Oh, you have a typo in your presentation. Your presentation says that kids today do not have short attention spans. And clearly they do have short attention spans. So you need to change that." And I said, "No, I don't think you're wrong. I think that you're wrong. I don't think that they have short attention spans. I think we have an engagement problem with our kids." And the example that I give, back to my daughter again, is that I have family that lives in St. Louis. So I will frequently drive from Chicago to St. Louis. And if you haven't done that drive, you should really do it. It's the most beautiful and exciting drive in the entire world. On one side, you have soybeans the entire way. The other side, you have corn. Occasionally, that landscape is broken up by a few windmills. But the last time I did that, it was a 5-hour trip, and my daughter was in the back seat, engaged for the entire 5-hour trip using Minecraft. Minecraft, another tool, by the way, if you haven't seen that one, that has graphics that are worse than the graphics that were on my Atari in the 1980s. However, the fact that she was using video and that she was interacting with that tool, that video tool, the entire way, she was engaged the whole time. So the lesson is that it's not that kids have a short attention span, it's that they're simply not engaged by the same sorts of sit and get lessons that may have engaged us before we lived in a completely digital world.
Well, and that also takes us to the point when we show the tools that we have for creating videos. If your lecture is long and tedious and boring in class, and your video continues to be long and tedious and boring, like you said, it's an engagement issue. So I will look for videos that are engaging and that the kids really are gonna, just grasp onto.
I was laughing because Jonathan just said you haven't driven through Kansas. I have. You can drive much faster through Kansas than you can through Illinois. So that's the one difference there. The next question that we want to answer is,
right, from Ruma.
Right. So flipped means the whole lesson is to be recorded for students to watch home. Then why can't we just refer them a video of our own choice to teach a topic? Please clarify. And I'm going to let Lisa talk about this some, but first, it means rethinking the lesson that you're going to teach. So if you used to lecture for 40 minutes in your classroom, part of what you did when you lectured was that you engaged the students, you talked to them, you got feedback from them. When you flip your lesson and you're sharing a concept or a skill that you want the kids to master at home or be introduced to, you're really just introducing them. You're getting them started. So rather than having a 40-minute lecture where you're engaging kids face-to-face, you might have a 10 or 15-minute presentation, and certainly no longer than 15. I think that most of the research so far says that anything over 15 and you start to lose your audience. But if you have a 15-minute lesson that your kids watch at home, then they come in and they're ready to participate.
But to answer your question, Ruma, you absolutely can. And actually, I prefer to use videos that are already created, and I will make use of those videos to teach a topic. So let's go back to our website here.
I'll get there, I promise.
There we go.
So we've got a couple of pages that I want you to be aware of, and that is, first, let's talk about the resources. We have several resources here for you to go and find videos that are already being used or find schools that are already flipping their classes. Then we also have some examples. And in our examples, we have some examples that are created by, for instance, Lisa created one of these.
Right.
But then we also have examples that are simply taken from another source. So there's a video here from Consumer Reports that is used with the DHS math classes. And they simply took the lesson directly from Consumer Reports. You might have heard several people are using Sal Khan's site, Khan Academy.
Yes.
A lot of people are using TEDx or TED-Ed to get videos. And I've run into a couple of different teaching styles, 2 different teaching models. Both science teachers, by the way. One science teacher was flipping his class and getting great results, said his kids responded better when he made the videos. And not only that, but when they could at least see his picture in the video at some point. And another teacher who also taught science and got great results flipped his classroom and he used only videos from other sources. He said the kids already get his perspective in class. He wanted them to get somebody else's perspective when they were studying at home. So we have those resources available for you. And in our integration tools.
Right, so these are some of my favorites. I actually prefer to use videos that are already made. I don't think that I make outstanding videos. I do have on our resources page, there is one video that I posted using Zaption where it was me reading a lesson. So I read the lesson out loud and then I embedded questions within the lesson, mostly so I would know the students were paying attention.
Right, so they watch the video and they answer some questions at home. So there's some interactivity.
Right.
But if you look at our 3 tools on the integration tools page that are listed there, there's actually 4. But we've got 3. Zaption, Edpuzzle, and Educanon are all tools that are designed to help you flip your classroom. And for at least Edpuzzle and Educanon, I'm gonna let you speak to Zaption because I've not used it yet. But for Edpuzzle or Educanon, you can actually take any YouTube video, ingest that into your lesson, add questions, and share that with your students. So it's not necessarily that you're starting from scratch.
And Zaption is the same way. You can create your own video or you can grab any video that is out there. I have used videos from history.com for my US history class, and you can embed questions. Some of the questions you have multiple options. You can use multiple choice questions, open-ended questions, checkbox questions, and then what I really like is then you can check the analytics and see how your students have responded. And at least on Zaption, which I use pretty frequently, it will also show the amount of time that the students took. So if I post an 8-minute video and I have a student who answered all of the questions in 4.5 minutes.
They're really advanced.
Well, I have a student who does this quite frequently, and I have to say she's able to answer all the questions. So she's zooming ahead in the video to get those questions answered, but she knows her stuff.
So TED-Ed is a tool that I haven't spent enough time with, but Lisa and I were fortunate enough to teach a professional development class in our district earlier in the semester, and we had 2 teachers, environmental science teachers, who decided that they were going to take and flip their entire classroom for next year. And they did it using TED-Ed, and they went on, they created educational accounts, and there's a way there where you can add your entire class list to TED-Ed and assign videos, some videos that you create, some videos that are available through TED, and some videos that are available through YouTube.
Right, so let's take a look. When we talk about the process of flipping, and so there are 3 easy steps. The first one is planning for the lesson. And we have a page on here called Planning for Filming. So there are things that you need to think about before you go about flipping a lesson.
Right, you shouldn't just sit down in front of your computer and start recording. You need to practice, and you need, like I said, the videos should be short. And this is another tool that I would love to say I'm taking credit for because I was smart enough to come up with this. But actually I worked with a great math teacher for the last several years by the name of Ken Indek. And he helped me put together a workshop for one of the schools that I worked in the last couple of years on flipping your lessons. And he talked about planning for those lessons and how important it is to think about what it is that you want to accomplish. Are you working on skill development? Are you working on a definition? Are you working on a graphic organizer? And then the questions that you need to consider before you start filming. Where are you going to store your video? How are you going to do, what tool are you going to use? Are you simply just going to use the camera on your computer, or are you lucky enough to have a document camera in your classroom and you're going to record as you're lecturing in the classroom?
Really quickly from our question and answer section, Jonathan, thanks for the info. He's mentioned if you're a Discovery Education Star teacher, which isn't hard to sign up, they offered a free 1-year subscription to EduCanon for Teacher Appreciation Week. I don't know if that's still something that's available.
So that's the full version of EduCanon. Most of the tools that I'll show you today are free in one way, shape, or form, but they're usually light versions. So if you've got the full subscription to EduCanon, it means that you can do many of the same things that we talked about with TED-Ed.
And Jonathan also asks, of the 4 options, which would you say to like best? And I think they're pretty easy to just log in and play around with. I have been partial to Zaption lately. I just think it's really, really simple. And my students, we have never had an issue with my students getting in and accessing the videos. There's been very little, if any, kind of tech support problem there. So that's what I've been using lately.
So Web 2.0 tools are great and terrible in one way, and that is that they change frequently. So I worked with a teacher last year who loved EduCanon, loved it, used it every single day. This is a history teacher, by the way, who was flipping some of his lessons. And then by the end of the year, he said, you know, it had changed just enough that he didn't like it quite as much as before, and he started using Edpuzzle and fell in love with that.
We have another question here from Suzanne. Are all videos in YouTube or National Geographic free to use?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. Most of the videos on YouTube and National Geographic are free to use. Last year, there was some talk about a premium level of YouTube, and frankly, I don't know if they ever pulled that off. Any of the videos that you have in National Geographic that you can get to publicly on the web are free to use, just through the fair use. For copyright, by the way, you're always better going to a link to that video, and if you're in EduCanon or Edpuzzle or Zaption, you're linking to the video as opposed to downloading it and changing it. You're always better doing that because there's no copyright on linked videos.
Okay, so step 1 was planning for the lesson, and now step 2 is creating the videos.
We've got a couple of, actually several free tools for you to take a look at. If you're going to, probably the easiest thing that you're going to do is if you're in a math classroom and you want to flip your class, if you've got a document camera and you're working the problems out for students already, use your document camera and record that and share that with your kids. And you can do that in a variety of ways. We're talking about, we're specifically focused on Chromebooks in this district. So I'm going to show you some that work great with the Chrome browser and a couple that are specifically designed for the Chromebook. The first one is Google Plus Hangouts on Air.
So if you're a Google Apps for Education school, this is a really simple way to create your own videos. You just using your Google account, and we have written instruction. We have a link to a written instructions here, and
I've got a screencast recording here of how to do it too. But essentially what you do is you go to Google Plus, you start a Hangout, and you hang out with yourself. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but when I start public Hangouts, I'm usually with myself anyway. So
you're used to talking to yourself?
I do that a lot. Well, sometimes I need expert advice. So anyway, if you share Google Hangout with yourself, then that will automatically be archived into your YouTube account.
Right, and that's really easy to access, very easy for students to access. Our next,
Hang on.
Go ahead.
I think there's something very important to talk about. There are people who are afraid to use YouTube for a couple of reasons. The first one is YouTube. I think a lot of people think if you put a video on YouTube, it's automatically public and available to everyone. And that's not true. There are different levels of sharing on YouTube. You can share it, you can make it unlisted, or you can make it private. Unlisted means that only people that you share the link with can see the video. They can't search for it on Google and find it. The other thing that you need to know about YouTube is that there is unlimited storage on YouTube. So whereas if you're storing your videos on a hard drive on a computer or on a staff server at your school, there's a good chance that you're going to run out of space. Video takes up a lot of space, especially if it's done well. But if you store it on YouTube, you have unlimited storage.
there's a question here from Pamela about schools blocking YouTube. Can students access the video on the linked lesson? I don't know the answer to that. Do you know, Joe?
I don't know. My guess is that they probably can. First of all, I'd like to say this. Tell your school to stop that. But if you can't tell your school to stop that, if they're not willing to stop it, there's something else that they could try. In your Wi-Fi access, they can probably set up 2 different levels, 2 different tiers of access so that teachers can access YouTube. I'm guessing they're doing this for bandwidth as opposed to because they're afraid of the things that are on YouTube. You can set up Wi-Fi access so that only teachers can access YouTube in school. And then the kids can have the domain for EduPuzzle or EduCanon that's open and whitelisted for them. So you can create your lesson using YouTube, and then you can share it with them on EduPuzzle or EdPuzzle or EduCanon, and they should be able to access it because of the domain.
Okay, talk about Screencast-O-Matic.
So Screencast-O-Matic is maybe the simplest tool out there for teachers. It's one that I ran into a couple of summers ago, and it's just simply gotten better since then. It's a free Web 2.0 tool. If you go to Screencast-O-Matic on any computer, then you can just simply record your screen. Now there's a picture on here of this. I've got a screencast here with directions on how to do it that I think is actually Screencast-O-Matic's directions. But if you look on the screen, it says start recording. If you go to Screencast-O-Matic, click the blue button, you can decide how big or how small you want your screen to be when you record, and just simply go. And then you can save those videos. They're saved directly on your Screencast-O-Matic account if you have one, or you can save them in YouTube.
To YouTube. And here's an example of how I use Screencast-O-Matic, and this is a little bit off the rails from Flipped Classroom, but if you have students who have accommodations, I have students who qualify for a reader for their tests and quizzes. And what I have done is I have created the test using Google Docs and then used Screencast-O-Matic to record myself reading the test. And then when the students go to take the test, they plug headphones into their Chromebooks, they have the test next to them, and they listen to the first question, they press pause, they answer the question. So that has really been a huge game changer for my students in terms of just accessing their accommodations.
Before we go on, I want to go back to Pamela's question about what if YouTube is blocked in your school. And it's just something that was running through the back of my head just now. And that is that there is a YouTube for Education channel so that you could whitelist just those videos that make it on YouTube for education. So if your school is blocking YouTube for content, or even if they're blocking it because they're afraid that it's going to eat up all the bandwidth, then you can use the YouTube for Education tool.
And Laura brings up a good point that students should be able to access YouTube at home, even if it's blocked at school. Check your district policies also. And she says they send permission slips, where'd it go? When using YouTube just to be safe, even if the kids aren't in the video.
Right, yes. All of that's good. So let's talk about the next thing. And something I like to talk about a lot is that the flipped classroom is kind of a gateway drug to integrating technology into your classroom. So if you're just in the first stages of using technology with your students, flipping your class and flipping a single lesson is a great way to start. But then the next thing that you want to do is probably give your kids some control over creating content for your class. In our school district, our kids all have Chromebooks. So if we want them to create videos, we can't use all of the standard tools that you can use with any computer. We can't download software. But there are a couple of really good tools that are made for Chrome. And just recently, I've started using Screencastify for Chrome. And I've got a direction sheet on here. This is a Google slide presentation that you can flip through at your leisure on how to use Screencastify. And there's a short video at the end of how to get started, but it's really simple to use. You can see my screen at the moment, and if you look up on the toolbar, you can see that there is a spot, an extension spot for Screencastify, that if I simply click on it, it brings up a button to record. It won't let me do that now because I'm sharing my screen with Google+. And then the last tool that I want to show you for Chrome is called Snagit. Snagit for Chrome is another really good tool. It's an extension and an app. So if you have the extension, you can record video, and if you have the app, you can actually edit video. Both of the Chrome tools will save the videos either to Google Drive or to YouTube. So if you've got YouTube blocked, you can simply just add the video to Drive and still access it.
Right, that's a great workaround.
One caution about using Snagit for Chrome. Depending on the kind of Chromebook that you use in school, it may or may not be quirky. If you've got an Acer or a Dell or a Lenovo Chromebook, you're in great shape. If you've got a Samsung Chromebook, they have different processors, and sometimes that doesn't really work very well for creating video.
Up at the top of this page, we also have some tools here. If you don't want to be screencasting yourself, which I often don't, I'm not a big lecturer, so there are some tools here that you can try to create videos that are not just you. So Powtoon is really easy to use. My students actually create videos using Powtoon. Go Animate is another one. Animoto, if you have a project where you'd like your students to be bringing in photos, it's pretty easy to add music and make a really nice looking video. And WeVideo is another one. So these are all options for you to try.
WeVideo is another tool that several of my teachers are using with kids and Chromebooks for them to make their own videos. One of the things that they miss, I'd say Chromebook and iPad are very, very similar in their capabilities. The one thing that the iPad does a little bit better than the Chromebook is video production. But WeVideo is the first tool that I've seen that kind of levels that playing field so that kids can create video on their Chromebooks, edit it, share it, add soundtrack, etc., all those different kinds of things. So we talked about both creating your own video and creating videos using someone else's resources. That's the integration tools that we talked about here. On the website, I want to point you to a couple of other things, specifically on our resources page. At the bottom, I want to show you a list of resources that I think can be invaluable to you. And specifically, I want you to look at the second Turning Learning on Its Head link. This one here. It's johnbergman.com.
I just like saying his name.
I do. And again, I'm going to say I'm a frequent co-presenter with John Bergman. It's not true. And I don't think he knows my name. But regardless, he has some great resources, and the one thing that I want you to do is to consider going to that website a couple of times. In the next couple of weeks, he has a book series coming out that you can check out. Very short lessons on how to flip your classroom, and then the benefits of doing so. He was talking about it yesterday at the Tech and Learning Live event, and I think that they're published in the next month or two. All right, so what else do we need to talk?
Well, I think just, things to remember in terms of flipping your classroom. I think number one, you don't need to flip your whole classroom. When you think about the lessons that you are doing, what things are you feeling Yeah, should we go off of screen share?
Yeah.
What things are you really feeling like, you know what, I'm just wishing that I was using my time better? Where are the pieces in your curriculum where students could really be getting content independent of you, but working on it with you? So as teachers, we want to be guiding students through learning. We want them to be, asking questions. We want them to be getting their hands dirty with the information. And so look at the parts of your curriculum where you really feel like, okay, this is something where I give this talk over and over again, or I have these resources at the ready, and start with one lesson and give it a try.
So wait, I want to answer a question over here before I respond to that. And I think that you said some really important things there, but from Jonathan Lee, I want to, our email address is all over this website that we're sharing. Please email me with your question about the glitch that your district is experiencing. We experienced that too. I think I know the fix for it, but I'd just like to talk to you a little bit more to make sure. So my email address is on that website. Please email me and I'll try and walk you through that. So let's go back to what Lisa was saying and say that, you don't have to flip your entire classroom. It can be individual parts. And I think that a lot of people say flipping your classroom, that's really for math and science.
Right.
Right. Well, it's true that this kind of flipping your classroom was really developed for math and science. There are a bunch of English teachers who would tell you that they've been flipping their classroom for their entire lives, because flipping doesn't just mean providing videos. It means providing, sharing resources with students to work on at home so that you can work together in the classroom. And I think English teachers have a legitimate argument to say they have been flipping their flipping their classroom by sending reading home and discussing it in the classroom. But let's talk about a couple of different ways that other curricular areas might flip. English teachers, how much do you enjoy teaching grammar to your kids? And how much do they enjoy learning it? It's really a fun time, isn't it?
But it's so necessary.
It is.
You can't not do it.
So I've had some English teachers recently who have done a remarkable job of taking that portion out of their classroom, taking the time or finding time by moving the grammar lessons online and having the kids do that at home, and then at school, then they work on the content and skills that they're learning in whatever literature they're looking at the particular time. And then for me, I taught history. I was not a computer ed guy. I taught history. And I think that in the beginning of my career, I actually did it backwards. And if I could go back and do it again, I think I'd be a better teacher, because my favorite class to teach is AP European History. Before they got to my class, all the kids took world history, which means that they should have seen somewhere along the line something like the French Revolution, have an idea of where it fits in a timeline. They don't. You can't count on that. They probably saw it in class, but it was ancient history to them, right? It is hard to make that timeline when you're a teenager. But something that I could do before I said, go home and read this chapter on the French Revolution, is I could provide them with a 5-minute video overview of the French Revolution, where it fits in the timeline and what the major events were, just kind of to trigger their background knowledge so that when they do start reading, they can get so much more out of the text.
And you brought something up earlier that I think is a good point that we should discuss further, and that is that flipping a lesson doesn't have to be video. So there are tools out there to create infographics. Maybe you'd like your students to look at some images. I think that there are audio files out there. Maybe they're going to listen to a famous speech, and then you're going to have them do something with that information when they come to class the next day.
So we have an English teacher here at our school, David Hirsch, I'm calling you out. Anyway, we have an English teacher here who teaches his kids classic literature. Most recently, he taught Tale of Two Cities. Tale of Two Cities is actually in the public domain. And so he flipped that in kind of a different way. What he did was he provided that text. Not only did they have the book, but he took the text from the Gutenberg project, put it into a Google Doc that they could all share and collaborate on together at home so that they're asking questions about the text. And then he also recorded that so that they have an MP3 file that they can be listening to. For me, that is so powerful that the kids can sit there and watch it, interact with it, and listen to it all at the same time.
Right, and I'm thinking from the perspective of our kids with special needs who need that multiple modality, right? So hearing it while they're watching it is going to be huge for them in terms of comprehension, but also just having the ability to go back and listen again.
Right.
Just that alone is going to make a huge difference.
So we've reached 45 minutes in, and we want to make sure that we get to some of the questions here on the website before we wrap it up for the day.
Yeah, so we have a question here from Zayella. I'm really sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. The question is, can you use the QR code to stream these videos to smartphones? And you came from an iPad district.
For sure. So the answer is yes. So what you think of is that wherever the website is that the video lives, whether it's an Edpuzzle site or an Educanon site, you're going to get a link. It's essentially a website. So you take the URL for that website and make that a QR code and make that available to your kids. They simply click on the QR code and it will take them directly to the video.
So there's a question here from Marita about organizing videos, and I think that's another important piece. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but as you start to flip more and more lessons, you need to think about where are you going to house these lessons so that they're readily accessible by your students. And I know that there are sessions going on throughout the day today. I saw one earlier on Google Plus Communities, which I actually use for my class. So I am posting my flipped lessons on my Google Plus community so my students know where to access those. There are lots of sessions on Google Classroom that are going on throughout the day today. That's another place where you can house these, because once you start flipping multiple lessons, you do need to think about how they're going to be organized, and most importantly, how the students are going to access them.
From my perspective, you need to have a home.
That's
somewhere.
right.
And so her home is Google Plus Communities.
And I will say, when I first did this, I emailed the link to all of my students. That was my first experience with flipping. And one time, that works fine.
Right. So
it gets messy real fast.
It's not fair to think that, I always have a conflict when I hear people refer to our kids as digital natives. It's not fair, because they might know how to use technology for social networking and they might be very good at it. They don't know how to use it for education. We have to teach them that. And if we're going to provide videos for them, I think it's important that we provide some kind of structure. So you have a home, a place that they go to, and you teach them to go to every single day, whether that's Google Classroom or Google Plus Communities, some other LMS like Schoology, Canvas, whatever you choose to do. Find a place where you can organize those things. It might just simply be a Google site, but something that you're comfortable with and can show the kids every single day so that they go to one place to get all of your material. Or
even a shared folder in Google Drive for those of us that are Google Apps for Education schools.
Yep.
There's a question here from Anna. I'm not sure of the answer to this. Do you know the answer? It says, you mentioned students can access things in Drive offline. Do you know if they're able to respond to forms offline?
So this is actually a fairly new feature in Google Apps, is that they can access a Google form offline and fill in the responses. And then the next time that they're online, the responses will be recorded.
And then there's a question here from MC Gabriella. Where can I find a flipped learning community to get some help or insights? I think there are definitely Google Plus communities for flipped learning where you can ask questions and share information with other teachers. That's a big part of being successful in terms of flipping lessons, is reaching out to other teachers, because I know I teach 4 different subjects and I have a lot of the same students year to year. So I'm not using the same lessons over and over again. And the idea of creating new flipped lessons for every single thing that I do is just overwhelming. So I reach out to a lot of teachers. There's a hashtag on Twitter for flipped learning. There might be a chat, a flipped ed chat.
There is, but I don't know what day it means.
Okay, so certainly start with our website. Use that as resources, and feel free to contact us. We're happy to reach out.
I'll add a couple of these on here, but
Okay.
I went to Google Plus while you were talking, and I flipped. I didn't even get to classroom or lessons, and there are at least 20 different communities that come up. And there's some, if you go to the more popular ones, you know that there's going to be some good material in there. And I agree with Lisa on Twitter. If you go searching on Twitter, you're going to find other professionals that are doing it. You're going to probably find professionals in your content area
Right.
or at your grade level who are doing it, who can share information with you.
Right. Let's see.
I think that's a good point, because it's 11:50 now. It's probably a good time to wrap up. I'm going to share our website one more time, just because I'm going to share on the front page that our information is there. Of course, I did that in the most awkward way possible.
What are you doing?
I don't know. It's not easy to do this when you're you're doing all this stuff at the same time. And there we go.
There we go.
So here is our flipped classroom webpage.
And again, the link to this webpage is on the resources tab from the Google Education On Air.
So these are our Twitter handles. So if you can find us on Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, please get there. But if you want my email address, it's very simple. I think your email address is probably on the website. I mean, on the
Yes, it
Google
is.
Plus. Mine is pretty simple. It's just jtaylor@dist113.org.
And if you reach out to us on Twitter, we're happy to send you more information or share email addresses.
Answer questions or point you in the direction of people who can answer your questions.
Absolutely.
We could also give you exemplars if you need those. So good luck. Happy flipping.
Happy flipping, everybody. And enjoy exploring the resources that we've put together for you on this website. Hope that it's really helpful to you, and enjoy the rest of your day.